So, West Business Development Center is a nonprofit, and we are funded by the Small Business Administration. And we are both a women's business center and a small business development center. And that just means that we get two different grants from the federal government. We also get grants from the state. Next slide, please. We use this funding to do training through one-on-one counseling and workshops and webinars. Right now, everything is virtual, but eventually we'll get back to in-person webinars. And we also do loan readiness packages. We also have a pool of specialty advisors to help you, everything from website development to social media marketing, permitting, etc. Next slide, please. This is our disclaimer, and you can read this in detail on our website. Next slide. And I am happy to pass this over to one of our past panelists, Catherine Marshall, for our webinar, How to Get Paid on Time.
All right. Should I go ahead and begin?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Wonderful. Well, welcome, everyone. My name is Catherine Marshall, and I am a consultant to nonprofits in the area. And so my job is to help people meet their mission. And I do this with training and consulting and some project management in different areas like strategic planning and board development. And my cohorts here are Cynthia Sharon. She's run Dancing Dog Design Build, a full-service design and build firm for the past 15 years on the coast. She has 5 employees and over $1 million in annual sales. Her jobs range from deck jobs to custom homes, during which she's learned the importance of communication and clear expectations in creating a successful client relationship. And Teresa Larson, Dr. Larson, earned her PhD in biochemistry from UCLA. She began her career consulting for the biotech industry, then shifted to visual communications of technical information. She's won awards as a computer animator and professional speaker. She's even done a TED Talk. Yay, you. In her primary career, she consults as a data visualization specialist. And she's also a multipreneur who runs several local businesses, including Painless Window Cleaning and Larson Livery and Transfer Company. And so I'm going to begin with our topic today, which is how to get paid on time. Now, for some businesses, this is not an issue about how to get paid on time. Some businesses are paid at point of sale, retail businesses, restaurants, those kinds of things. So this issue really comes up more with consultants and contractors and those who have service businesses like childcare and landscaping, where you expect to get paid monthly, long-term projects that you might be doing. So each of these business types carries its own challenge about getting paid on time. And we're specifically going to be talking about those who have to invoice customers and who need to rely on getting paid on a project basis. So this next one here. So let's think about what causes people to do things like pay slowly or to even hold back payment. So sometimes when people are just starting out as a small business owner, they're reluctant to talk about money with their customer. And a lot of that comes from a lack of confidence about pricing. Maybe you're not sure about your bidding. And so there's challenges associated with how you come across when you're trying to bid a project and be able to talk to people about, how much it's going to cost. So this hesitation about bidding has a tendency to come across with people, and they realize that you're new. And sometimes, unfortunately, they take advantage of that. So it's really clear that you have a really some kind of a format that provides a layout of what the costs of the project is going to be, how much it's going to cost, if there's going to be projects. Later on, Cynthia Sharon is going to show us a really nice example about how she communicates with her customers and prevents any misunderstandings. So making sure that you have some confidence when you're speaking about your bidding and that you are putting things in writing. And when things in writing are really powerful and they are less likely to be subject to misunderstanding than if you just have an oral discussion about how things are going to cost. So another thing that, again, we just have to be aware of sometimes what people are thinking. So sometimes potential customers may assume that a small business will not aggressively pursue payment. And that's not true and that's not fair. They may look at their bills that they have to pay and they say, okay, well, this PG&E is going to turn off my lights, so I better pay them first. A small business owner, maybe they'll wait just a little bit and I can push them to the side. So we want to understand that sometimes it's not personal. It's just that people start making these kinds of assumptions. So again, your attitude when you come to the table is really important, so people know that you are going to be expecting to be paid on time. Sometimes our potential customers are just disorganized. And so getting bills and paying things on time, or not even having a bookkeeper and trying to do everything themselves if you're doing a business-to-business sale, sometimes they're just disorganized. And so anything that you can do that would help people pay easily is really going to be a big help for you. Later on, Dr. Larson is going to be speaking about and showing us some different ways that you can bill customers that makes it easy for them to pay, and it's not lost in a lot of paperwork. So we'll take a look at that. If you are trying to sell to large corporations and government agencies, then I think it's not a secret that those types of businesses take longer to pay than maybe an individual or another small business. And the reason why is just because there's a lot of layers and bureaucracies. Very often you're going to be talking to and dealing with one person who then has to approve your invoice and send it to someone else for approval and then for payment. So it goes through, virtually a lot of desks. So I know that some small businesses have decided that they don't even want to work with government agencies or large corporations because of their tendency to pay slowly. Government agencies, it's not unusual for them to pay 60 and 90 days after you invoice. So unless you have some capacity to be able to withstand that long time before you get paid, this may be, might want to steer clear of them. And then unfortunately, some people contract with us and they just don't have the money. And there's, some people just have maybe wishful thinking, or they think some other money's going to come in on time, or they just, again, they're not very organized. But we just have to be aware that some people do that, where they say they make an agreement with you, but they're really not sure how they're going to get paid, but it'll all work out in the end. So we have to be aware of what some of the mindsets of some of the people that we're working with. And again, a lot of it is just not personal. It doesn't have anything to do with the value of the job that you're providing. It's just some attitudes that our customers take that contribute to slow payment, or them even trying not to pay you at all. So one of the things that we want to do is to really give your customers as many tools to help them pay on time. So again, a signed agreement, that they go ahead and they see in writing what it's going to cost. I know as a consultant, what I do is I send them a scope of work when I'm preparing to tell them what I'm going to do. And if it looks like that's something that they want me to do, I'll go ahead and send them the scope of work, but a place for them to sign. And on that scope of work, there'll be, if I'm going to ask them for a deposit in advance. So I have a signed agreement that says that they're going to be paying me, and this is the work that I've done. So there's a signed agreement. For some of your other customers, even just having a piece of paper that has written down what you're going to do and they're initialing it, that might be enough. But something in writing, I think, is going to make it easier. And then making sure that they have a copy of it, I think that twigs them into they've got to pay. One of the things I run into is that sometimes our small businesses don't might not have bookkeepers themselves or might not have their own act together, so they don't invoice in a timely manner. So you need to have that invoice ready to go right when you finish the job. So if for some reason you wait a couple of weeks later before you give them the invoice, that telegraphs that it really doesn't mean that much to you. So it almost encourages people to pay you late if you're not ready with your invoice. So be sure you're ready with your invoice. Make sure you've connected with them to make sure that they know you've paid on time, that you've completed your work, and then that'll say, hey, I'm professional. If you're working for a corporation or maybe a government agency, you want to become familiar with their procedure. I know a lot of the businesses that I work with asked me for a W-9 with my first invoice with them. I've never worked with them before. And I don't want to find out about that after I've been sitting here waiting for them to pay me. And the bookkeeper says, well, we never got your W-9, so we didn't pay you. So I try to meet with or talk to or email the person that's going to be writing the checks. So I make sure I know all the things I need to do and they need to have in order to pay me on time. And then this last one, again, Terry's going to talk about this one, but use some methods that make customers help them if they're easy to pay. And we'll learn a little bit about those in just a minute. But finally, I think it's what's really important here that I think we should just take a look at is really understanding our own attitude about money. You need to have a positive attitude about the fact that you have value for your work and you've done a good job and now you need to be paid. You need to have this confident attitude about that fact that you are worth what you have billed for. And some people, from how they were raised or whatever, they may be reticent about asking people for money or billing and not comfortable about talking about money. So that's something, if you are aware that you might have difficulty in there, you might want to work on that, read a book, get some therapy, whatever you have to do in order to kind of make sure that you feel really confident about the fact that you deserve the money that you've earned. It's really tempting to get frustrated when somebody doesn't pay on time, but it's important for you not to take it personally. Their reason why they haven't paid may have nothing to do with you. But having the confidence to be able to pursue that funding is very important. A mentor once told me to think of slow payers as taking food from your children's mouths. I know that sounds very extreme, but when you think about it, a customer who doesn't pay or makes you go through a whole bunch of hoops and ask them over and over again to get paid, they've already received the benefit of your labor. Your money is still in their pocket, and that prevents you from paying your bills and providing for your family. So you want to get comfortable with asking for money and even pursuing it if people are not paying you. So a couple of other things here. Also protect yourself a little bit. If you have some output, like you have to buy some things in order to produce the job, ask for a deposit up front to cover some of your hard costs of the job, just to make sure you can still pay those bills in case someone is slow to pay, because you don't want to interfere with your own credit because someone's a slow payer. What I like to do, and I have done in the past, is if I've already reminded people a couple of times by email that I haven't received a payment, then I call them. And if they're nearby, I may even drop by. If you call them, you tell them about the invoicing, you do the reminders, and then you get a commitment to when you're going to get paid, and then you offer to come by and pick the check up. and I know people are being careful during COVID, but I think it is pretty important for us to really stop just sending emails, because a lot of that comes from maybe not wanting to confront a customer. And if they know they're going to have to speak to you face to face or on the phone, they'll be more likely to pay. And then one last thought here is, don't be afraid of firing slow paying clients. I have fired a slow paying client. After, every month doing work for this person was over and over again. I had to spend a lot of time emailing and calling to make sure I was paid. And the last straw for me was when finally she sent me a check and it wasn't signed. And this was kind of an old school way of just kind of messing things up. So you'd have to ask for a check again. So she just laid me even further. So once I did get her to pay and she asked me to do more work for her, I told her no, because it was taking more time. It was taking more time away from my business. I couldn't earn other money because I was spending time with her, just getting her paid. So I felt very comfortable about that. And I still was collegial with this person afterwards and when I saw her in public. But, it's when you think about it, if someone is just a constant problem, then you need to kind of let them go. So now I think, let me just, Cynthia, why don't we hear from you? Would you like me to bring up your document?
I don't need it quite yet.
Okay, so I'll just leave this up for now.
So my name is Cynthia Sharon. As Catherine mentioned, I'm a general contractor. I run Dancing Dog Design Build Incorporated. And in the 14 years I've been in business up here, I've only had issues with payment less than a handful of times. And ironically, they were mostly friends of the family who I think, as Catherine said, just took the monetary relationship a little casually because of the friendship. But what I've basically come down to is I think the things that are most important are clear communication, as Catherine mentioned, transparency, and expectation management. So I won't give, or very seldom give, a cost per square foot over the phone, because I basically consider people who say, oh, how much does it cost to build the house? A little bit tire kickers, if that's one of their first questions. And I come back to them and say that's the equivalent of asking how much does the car cost without knowing whether you're talking about a Volkswagen or Ferrari. Very occasionally I will give per square foot cost estimates to people just so they have some idea what they're dealing with. But generally my system is to meet with the client. We go over the scope of the work, the quantity, the quality, the complexity, because all of those really affect, especially on something as big and complex, obviously, as a single family home, that really affects your per square foot cost. I will often do a free rough budget, which might take me 20 minutes to 2 hours, depending on whether we're talking about a deck or a custom home. And I do that basically so we're not wasting each other's time. And it could be off by plus or minus 20%, but it gives us some idea if we're in the same ballpark. I've tried asking people if they have a budget for the project as a way to help guide the design decisions, and not that many people are comfortable saying, this is my budget. And I think a little bit has come down to trust. People don't necessarily know me. And they're like, well, if I tell her it's going to cost, I have a budget of X, she's going to build to X. So instead, I give them a real rough idea. And then if they're okay with that, then I go into a much more detailed budget. I mostly don't have signed contracts on small and medium jobs. I do a lot of word of mouth referrals, a lot of repeat clients, and I haven't felt the need to do signed contracts. But if it's a larger job, it's certainly in the case of a single family home, I will do a design contract and get a deposit on it. So my deposit, is basically from relatively small to something a little bit bigger, but it holds a place in line because I've had clients want me to start some design and then drop it, and I've turned away other work to create this spot for them. So it's refundable. Well, it's basically credit against the first invoice. So it creates a little bit more seriousness on their part and assures me that I'm not turning away other work for a client who isn't that serious about what's going on. So my proposal, that's where the transparency comes in. So the proposal is going to be really clear about what's included in the scope of work, and also equally importantly, what's not included in the scope of work. So it might be that the client's going to pay for the permits themselves, or the client is going to get rid of all of the debris, do the dump run themselves. That just creates clarity, so there's no confusion later on. It's pretty detailed. I will include line items for my labor costs, for my estimate for material costs, and then I do include, a lot of times the clients will supply their own light fixtures or their own flooring. And I feel like it behooves me to include a rough budget for that, because otherwise it artificially shrinks what the client's total budget is. If they're supplying all of the appliances, the flooring, the light, and I'm doing everything else, they think they can get their house built for X, but they have forgotten to include all the stuff they're supplying. Or more often, they think of it, but they don't know how much those costs might be. So I give them some rough numbers so the total budget is actually useful to them. Let's see. So I don't do a lump sum. As I said, I do the line item thing. And the example that was most illustrative to me is I asked one of my subcontractors, a heating sub, to give me a bid for a ducted heating system for the house. And I got 2 bids. One contractor gave me a lump sum of like $21,000. And the other contractor gave me almost identical price, but he had it broken down. Every single elbow, the furnace, the ducting, the screws was all itemized. And it gave me a lot more confidence in his number. And that was just kind of a nice validation of the system I have done, which has a lot of transparency. And I think that is one of the things that creates a lot of trust with the client, that they know that this number, they can see exactly where it came from. So now we can go to the good communication list, Catherine.
Okay, sure.
So the other thing I have been doing for a while is this good communication checklist. And it's the effort to ensure clear communication. So I just, the obvious or not so obvious, licensed, bonded, insured, that I do have workman's comp. We have atypical days. We work 10-hour days, and I want people to know that. Most people really like that because it means one less day in their home, but it also means long days when we are in their home. I talk a little bit about how I bill out. So on remodel jobs, it's always going to be T&M, time and materials, with a percentage for overhead. And I do that because it's impossible to know what the final cost on a remodel is going to be until we've actually gotten in, looked at the status of what's behind the walls, et cetera, et cetera. So I tell the clients, I feel like that's more fair to both of us, because if I give them a fixed bid on a remodel, I'm taking a guess at what the final cost is. I really can't know. And only hindsight will tell me whether I'm being fair to them or fair to me. I get very clear about my rates with my employees. I tell them how the billing cycle is set up. And then I've had a couple clients who thought I was charging for time to the job, travel time or lunch breaks. And so I clarified that those are not paid, but the law does require the 10-minute breaks during the day, and that's covered as billable time. I do talk about there is some element of stress inherent in all construction projects, and that's the expectation awareness there. And again, it comes down to transparency and communication. And I remind them that it is an estimate for the remodel. Obviously, a fixed bid is got a different communication checklist. And the final thing I do is I make clear that my design work, including drawings and job costing, are billable hours. Some people think because I'm a contractor, I will design for free. So I disabuse them of that notion. So I have found this has worked really well. I've had very, very few problems with clients paying me. I'm obviously my numbers are bigger than like Terry with the window cleaning. So I have a couple of invoices every couple of weeks. So it's not onerous on my part. People pay by check, basically. I have on occasion done some payments on the installment plan without charging interest, but it's very, very rare that I've needed to do that. The final thing I would kind of mention is it is good, as Catherine said, in terms of getting delayed in the payments to yourself. You need to have a nest egg. I've got a pretty sizable nest egg in my checking account to create liquidity, because the numbers going in and out of, my account are pretty large. I can get a delivery of materials that's $20,000. And if it's a fixed bid, I may not see the payment for, 2 months or something. So having some liquidity so you don't feel really, really stressed, and you instead can be gracious with your client if they're just a tiny bit late, that has served me well as well. So those are my main points on how to get paid in time.
Okay. I'm going to stop sharing here. And so now we have Terry Larson.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad you're listening to this webinar. This is a really important issue for people who have their own businesses. And like Catherine told you, I do a lot of different businesses, but locally I have my window cleaning business and my vehicle storage business. And for both of those, I use Square. And with painless window cleaning, most clients expect to pay when I'm leaving, when I'm done with the job. And so usually it's not a problem. But I also tell clients, especially ones who aren't there. Yesterday, I just did a job where the place was vacant and the customer lives somewhere else, not in the Fort Bragg area. So I am emailing the invoice to this person. So I use for this automation, I use Square. I like them a lot. It works really well, and they have a lot of ways that you can customize these things. What I want to do is show you some examples of what the invoicing looks like. So, for example, this is just a fictitious invoice that I created for a client named Renee Lassiter. That's actually my name scrambled. It's an anagram of my name. And you can customize the invoice that you send. You can give a custom invoice number. There's one up here. It's basically the date. You can tell them what it's for and describe what it's about and how much is due, and then what your payment terms are. And that's what I have here in this message. And then I refer them here. They can just click on Pay Invoice. And they can securely use a card to pay. Okay. Now, they also can mail me a check, and they can also pay me cash. But this is really easy, and people tend to, when I email them an invoice, they tend to do this payment online. You do end up paying a little extra for this, but they do all the banking, and if you're overwhelmed with a bunch of work, that's kind of nice. The money just magically appears in your bank account, which is very convenient. Now, if they haven't paid in a while, they can get a reminder. So this, you'll notice, this looks just the same as that previous invoice I showed you, but at the top of it, there's a custom message. It's showing that it's overdue. I created this invoice back in June. And then I can just say very gently, hey, you might have missed this when I sent it before, and we're just sending you a friendly reminder that we want you to pay. And then they go down here and everything's the same, and they can click on the invoice. Oops. Now let's say they're really dragging their feet. You can escalate your message. So here's what they would get 30 days after this invoice is due, and says, hey, we sent this 30 days ago. Please make your payment today to avoid any late penalties. What I really like about using Square and these invoice reminders is that you can make the message whatever you want it to be. And sometimes, and very often it happens, the invoice goes out, they've never seen their email client has never seen an invoice from Square before, and so it just puts it into spam, and that often happens. And what's also nice about Square is you can tell if that's happened, kind of indirectly. I'm going to show you that here in a second. Here's, it's sitting here too long. Okay.
While you're doing that, Terry, can you tell us how much Square costs?
For invoicing, they don't charge me anything unless I'm actually getting paid. So they get charged. I get charged per payment, a small amount. I don't remember exactly. It's a very small number, plus somewhere between 2 and 3% of the bill. Okay, give me a second to get this back to where it was. There we go. Okay, so what I've done here is I'm just showing you that one invoice to Renee Lassiter, and it's overdue now for a long time. I can see that in my list if I'm looking at all my clients, who's paid, who hasn't. And then if I want to see what's happening with this invoice, it shows what happened. So for instance, I emailed it on the 5th, and the recipient viewed it on the 10th, so 5 days later. If they didn't see it, if it went to spam, it'll just say that the customer hasn't seen the invoice yet, or they haven't opened it. And that usually is an indicator that it didn't land in their inbox. So what I can do at that point is send a reminder and hope that the next one doesn't go into spam, which it usually does. So that means I either have to text them or call them and just say, I sent the invoice, you didn't get it, you better check your spam folder. And usually they do, and then they pay right away. If you don't have automatic reminders set up and you go in here and look and you see that it's been a while and they haven't done anything, you can just go down here and hit remind and then just put a little message in really quick and have that sent. But what's even more handy, this can be very time intensive. It's really handy to be able to set up custom notifications. Oh, it wants me to sign in again. Dang it. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to this invoice, edit it. Okay, technology problems here.
This is good for people to get a sense of real life situations.
Okay, I can edit this invoice. And if I go, so this is where I set up what my message is, the description of the job and how much it costs. And then down at the bottom, there are all these settings I can set. So I can say how I want to collect the payment. I can do credit or debit. They can do an ACH transfer if they want to. They can add a tip if they want to. They can save their card on file, which is really handy for my vehicle storage business because they get billed every month and it can just automatically bill them. They set it up and they're good to go from there. Down here, there's a place where you can edit your reminders. Oops. And you can define how often, so how long after the payment, the invoice goes out, you want to wait before sending them a reminder. Put it in your own voice exactly what you want to say and set up as many reminders as you want. So here's one that's 2 days after it's due, 3 days after it's due, but I can set it up at a week, a month, and then just make the message more urgent the more the time goes on. And you can add as many reminders as you want. You can have a reminder go out every day after the day it's due. What I really like about this is that it can be friendly and it's not this template that Square gives me that that tells them that it's overdue. It's in my voice. It's how I want to say it. And I can be friendly and just say, you may have missed this, or, went in your spam folder. I understand. Here's, you're overdue. Go ahead and pay this right away. If they are one of these people that are slow or trying to take advantage, then I can have an escalation and just says, you know what, if you don't pay, then I'm going to start charging you late fees or something like that. Okay. Now I put screenshots in the deck so that if you download the deck, you'll be able to see those. So that'll remind you of kind of what I showed you very quickly.
I just wanted to add, I actually get a regular invoice from a website, social media person, and she uses her QuickBooks to send bills. And I have to tell you, it's very easy to pay. All I have to do is, like what you have, is click on the button, and then I enter my bank card to pay it. And then I get and it allows me to look at the invoice. It allows me to look at get a receipt. And it's just very, very easy. And I'm wondering if anybody else has any kind of methods that they find easy to use to put them in the chat there. What other thoughts do you have there, Terry?
Well, there are lots of options. I use Square just because I'm familiar with it. I use it for my payroll also, and for I can take credit or debit cards on site. I mean, it's very handy. It's very useful. I've had it for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And they've been improving it gradually over the years and adding a lot of features. And I really like what they've done. They've been very responsible to their client base.
Okay. Let's see here. Do we have any questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat or the Q&A.
There are no questions at this time.
Okay. All righty. Let's see. So how should we proceed here? Should we just
bring the deck back?
Okay. And I'll just.
Terry said she was going to go through her slides really quick.
Yeah. And so here's the slides that are on the deck that basically showed what she has shown us already. All right.
So everyone will get a copy of the slide deck and a link to the recording. And that's part of why Terry put the stuff she just showed you into the deck. So thank you guys for that presentation.
I actually have one other thing I think that we haven't talked about that might be useful to address a little bit is what people see as red flags, clients that you don't even want to go near. And for me, part of it is I screen people over the phone a little bit if they sound like they have no idea what they want. That to me is a little bit of red flag. But the other thing that I found is a real red flag is when I go into someone's house and everything is, well, how much is that going to cost? And how much more is that going to cost? And what if, can I do this myself? It's just like, that's someone for whom money is the driving factor of everything. And that's just not a comfortable place for me in terms of working with someone. So I'm just curious if Catherine or Terry have red flags clients to avoid because you suspect you will never get paid.
I know for me, as a consultant, there's a lot of times people, board of directors and nonprofits, some of them are not used to what a consultant costs to do something like a strategic plan. And so I always have this thing, are they clutching their pearls and falling off their chair as I give them my price? And so if I get a sense for that, sometimes what I do instead is they may need more help getting to, well, first of all, they may want to talk to some of my past clients, and that might give them some comfort. But they also might want to just do a small piece. So I give them an offering of a small piece or another kind of project to get used to working together and for them to see a benefit. But that is a red flag for me if they are really not familiar with what prices are for my field and the value how that transforms the organization, so they then can go after more money and have a stronger board and all these kinds of benefits that would grow the organization. So if it's the same kind of thing, if they're fussing around, can you not do that part of the strategic plan so it'll cost us, so it'll fit in our budget more? And I'm like, no, it's gonna, like a house, it's gonna not fall. It's gonna fall apart.
No windows.
No windows. Well, that's not gonna work. So that's I do have my red flags. And Terry, do you have any that?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm sure that the people who are watching this webinar now or even later, they're going to have a whole range of businesses, and some of them are going to be more complicated, certainly like yours, Cynthia, and yours, Catherine, where you have a bigger project scope, a bigger length of time. There may be things that are more like mine, a service-based business. And you're absolutely right. Setting those expectations is just as important for even just a one-time, one-off service, going and cleaning their windows, for example. And it helps a lot to have that estimate. So very often, if it's a new client, I go by there, I'll go ahead and drop their scheduled work into the calendar, and then I'll put pending approval of the quote. And sometime between now and when I do that, I go by their place, I look at it, I get a pretty good estimate of how long I think it'll take me and my crew to do it. And then they don't have sticker shock when I come and do the windows. And of course, if they say, oh, that's way more than I thought it was going to be, then I can just take them off my calendar. That's fine. And don't be shy about letting those clients go. If they're not willing to pay what you're worth, there are at least half a dozen, maybe more, window cleaning businesses here on the coast. And a lot of them way underbid me. I have had somebody walk in the door after I gave a quote. They heard what I said and they bid half. And I'm like, you can have it. They've got lower overhead. They've got a smaller crew. They do maybe inferior work. I will actually sometimes go back to that client and say, so were you happy with how it came out? So it really helps a lot to do that quote, to set those expectations. And then when at the end of a job, if they're happy, and they usually are, cleaning windows really transforms the room, and they'll pay me on the spot, which is great. So having those expectations met and set up ahead of time, it helps a lot.
The other thing I was going to say that I think I've come to realize is that in some ways, a cost is a Rorschach test. Some people will look at, say, it's going to cost $5,000 or whatever, and they'll be clutching their pearls and gasping. And another client will get the same number and they'll be, okay, fine. So I finally came to realize, like you said, Catherine, it really doesn't have a whole lot to do with you. It has to do with their, where they are financially, what their comfort level is, and they project onto it. I had this one client who, regardless, I did all this work for a repeat client. Every single time her response to my estimate was, oh, that much? And after the fourth or fifth time, oh, really, that much? I realized I could pick any number. She was going to say that. So I got a little more comfortable with, yeah, that's the number, because you don't have a whole lot of control about how someone else is going to perceive your number. All you can do is try and, make your numbers as transparent as possible.
Okay. And react to their passive aggressive, oh, that much, by lowering your number, because you got to charge what you're worth.
Right. Yeah.
And I just wanted to also just say that when you're first starting out and you're doing something like bidding a project, if you're bidding, you're going to make mistakes. And so just this is going to be a learning curve for you. You realize you didn't either articulate the range of areas that could have happened, or you run into something that you really can't bill a customer for because you just didn't think about it. So just be kind to yourself and realize it's a learning curve, but don't let that interfere with your confidence. You're gaining that information so that your pricing and experience, so that now when you go in, and it'll just take a little bit for you to get a really strong price. And knowing what your competition is charging and knowing what your costs are is so important to get the right price, so that you're not underselling yourself and you get good value for your, the customers understand you got a good value and you feel confident about your pricing.
I agree. Well, so you guys probably saw that I ran the poll, and I thank everyone for participating. Those polls are important for knowing what you guys need and how the webinar went, and what webinars you'd like to see in the future. Next slide.
Give me a little grief there.
So this is a map that just shows all the women's business centers in California. And even though the centers look like they're all clustered on the coast, they serve all of the counties of the state. Next slide. If you ever want to know where there's a women's business center in your area, you can just call us and we'll let you know. And these are all the SBDCs in California. Next slide. And I want to thank our presenters again for presenting today. And I'll see you at the next Coast Women in Business meeting. And thank you everyone who attended, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.